Welcome to the Blackout Show, presented by the Guillen Grid, a show about the Chicago White Sox baseball, the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll debate what's working and what's not on the south side of Chicago. It's old school versus new school baseball. And most importantly, we're keeping all the receipts.
What's up, everybody? It's Gonzo here. With me tonight is Ozzie Guillen Jr. and Justin Lee. Fellas, it's episode 30. 30 episodes into our first season as we go into the off season. And we're going to begin it tonight with the breaking news of the week, which was Jason Benetti going to Detroit. We saw Lawrence Holmes dropping his podcast about this topic. Let's begin it with you two discussing Jason Benetti.
By the way, why us two? By the way, Mr. Lee has been very, very quiet about all this week. You've been chatting it up in the chat. Mr. Justin was so quiet this week that he was giving me a whooping in fantasy, and he just waited to see me live. He did give me a whooping, a well-deserved whooping, because I was supposed to win the probability, but I want to hear your part on that, because you've had a lot to say. I want to see your take on that, because I can give mine, and mine's going to be actually very surprising to White Sox fans, I think.
So, I mean, if I'm being honest, I had no clue who Jason was before he got hired. You hate to see homegrown talent leave, especially with the success he's had and with the opportunity he took with the White Sox. It sucks seeing him leave, but I'm not going to be going crazy on social media feeling sorry about it, because I like the later end of what Lawrence Holmes was saying. There's also several local options out there that should get this opportunity, and I'm always the optimistic guy looking forward to the next person that steps up, because, I mean, it's hard growing up in the era of Hawk and then transitioning to Jason. I think Jason did a hell of a job, but I'm not going to be heartbroken about him leaving. I think that shouldn't be the biggest news. Like, I really hope that Chris Getz makes bigger news than what this is right now.
So I want to say something real quick on you use the word Hawk, and he got thrown into this mix again, and people were like dragging him through the mud. Okay, if you were 5, if you're like 20, you didn't hear a broadcast when you were 5 years old. Okay, you're pooping in your pants probably. Your mom and dad were changing your diapers. Okay, so to drag Hawk, and maybe you were like 10, and you heard a version of, like, if you're somebody, like, there's a couple guys on Twitter that I follow that, you know, they were like 14, 15, 16 years old in like Hawk's prime, like right when he started in the 90s, and like you have an opinion, a negative opinion about Hawk, I respect it, because you actually got to listen to him and you have an opinion of him. So number one, the whole dragging Hawk through the ground, unnecessary. Half of the people on Twitter did not even see Hawk broadcast, and what was the greatness of Hawk and Tom Paciorek, because, and this is where I'm going to get into Benetti. White Sox had great teams, but there was like no championships, and people associated listening to Chicago White Sox with Hawk Harrelson, and you learned. And Hawk, I'm okay with a local broadcast guy being a homer. So I was okay with Hawk being a homer. I was okay with Jason Benetti being a homer. You're broadcasting your team. I listen to the Cleveland Guardians. I listen to every other great broadcaster is a homer to his team. Like, why wouldn't you be? You're covering this team. That's just the reality of it. And I think a lot of people are expecting like a national broadcast, like someone to be impartial. Here's the other part. I think with broadcasters, man, it's a 50-50 shot if someone's going to like him or not. Do I think that Jason at time was corny? Absolutely. He's corny at life. Okay. Like you talk to the guys, that's just his style. But broadcasting wise, his talent is very, very good. That's the reason why he's on national TV and covering pretty much every sport. I think like highlight is the only sport I haven't seen Jason Benetti broadcast. Anything he broadcasts, and I actually think baseball is not his best sport. I think he's really, really good at college basketball and really, really good at football. But if you're a Jason Benetti fan, this is a decision that Jason made, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt of him and his team that it's probably the best move for his career. I guarantee you he got more money. I guarantee you he got more years, and I guarantee you he's got more influence in his contract and leeways for him to go be able to take more opportunities at the national level.
Facts.
Because one thing that he made for sure understand is that his dream job, which was a stepping stone, at the end of the day was not being the Chicago broadcast for the next 50 years. He's moving on to he's eyeing for like the Costas of the world and World Series, which again I think that it's very mutual for him. So I think from a decision standpoint, the part that I thought was crazy is that they automatically go and blame the story that 670 the score shared and Bernstein saying that Jason gets fired because Jerry doesn't think he's funny. I don't think Jerry cares or anything who the broadcast team is. He's not. That's a whole other department situation, and there's a budget to sign people. So the fact that like they're making it seem that Jerry came down a la Jerry Jones and said, "I want Jason Benetti out," then they don't know Jerry very well when it comes to decision making and things that happen. Maybe people want Jerry to be more that way, but I'm not buying that. I think that it was a typical negotiation situation, okay, where the team is at right now. They didn't really feel the need to have somebody making that much money in the booth because they think, in their opinion, that they're going to get a wins above replacement broadcaster and bring in the same type of people. Or guys, guess what? They are telling you guys in a few words, we're going to rebuild for a couple years, so it doesn't matter who we have in the broadcast booth. You guys are probably not going to be listening anyways, so we can build up this new talent, which was the case with Jason Benetti. The only thing that I feel bad for Jason was that he got to do what, a 20 games, 40 game season in the COVID year, and then 190 game winning season. He broadcasted a lot of bad baseball in his time with the Chicago White Sox. He's post Ozzie Guillen era. He came in and he had all the rebuild seasons. So we never got to see Jason Benetti with like 100 winning game team winning night after night. He basically was there entertaining us with a subpar team that showed flashes of greatness. So he's in a better team right now on paper, which is probably on the trend up, got more money and got more years. So do I think Jason Benetti is less of a White Sox fan today than he was before? No, because that's his job and he went to got paid more. So at the end of the day, Jason got paid more. Just like when players leave the city, oh, I love this place so much, but I'm going to take 50 million more dollars somewhere else. Well, you didn't love it that much because obviously, and we understand that. So that's my take on that. I think the White Sox, I think right now it's something that everyone just nitpicks every little thing. But I think that the problems on the White Sox list, as much as we love Jason Benetti, who's in the broadcast booth, is just not on the top 10 of things that need to be addressed. When I look at this lineup and then there's 6 positions that I don't know who the starting player is, I wish him well, but it's not something that I'm going to hit the panic button like, oh my God, what are we going to do without Jason in the booth? I think there's a lot bigger problems than that.
Yeah, I'm one of the people that I enjoy baseball at home. One of my favorite things about the sport actually is the TV broadcast. And I grew up on Hawk and, putting it on the board, he gone. Like that's the type of stuff that I'm going to take every day with me for the rest of my life. When we get to Jason Benetti, it's not the fact he's not a bad broadcaster. He's actually, to Ozzy's point, he's very good at his job, especially with the progressive, witty banter. He's quick with it. He quick with it. The thing is, there was no real catchphrases there. Nothing I could really hang on to as a fan of the team. There was no putting it on the board, and it's really hard to go from Hawk and then you get to Jason Benetti that it just eliminates that. So I mean, it is what it is. I'm not going to lose any sleep over, Jason not calling games. If the White Sox were really smart, they'd just put Lynn on TV and give the fans what they really deserve. So if you're not going to listen to me, Chicago White Sox organization, if you're not going to give me Sox Fest, you animals better give me Lynn Casper every day I turn on the TV, or we're going to have some issues.
And he's on radio, right? He's not leaving. And again, we don't know why if they asked them to do it, if he wants to stay in radio. And
Yeah.
I think here's a part that no one really wants to talk about is, Stone stays in there, and maybe Len likes the radio. They have a really good chemistry with DJ, and it's a great broadcast, and it's something different for his career. So I don't think it's an automatic. I think you ask him because of his talent. Like, the guy's just that great. But I really think that whoever they bring in is going to bring their own style. 50% of the people are going to like him. 50% are going to hate him. Okay, that's just how the business works. I will tell you this. I think Jason Benetti is probably one of the only broadcasters that I thought in the history of the White Sox could actually get Sox math correctly. Because when I thought Sox math, I thought Jason. I literally thought that he could win it every single time. So I think that generation of like the younger analytical, that type of like
And that's another part too, OJ, that it was getting hard for me to grasp, because like I've listened as a child growing up, I've listened to Hawk, call games for, a bad team. But it's not all about the statistics in that regard. He could give me some stories. I would rather hear about Carl Yastrzemski's fucking hitting tools every day than hear the analytics of a team that's 38 games under
well,
500.
here's the other part though. When people say, Gordon Beckham or AJ, they're not looking for a color guy. They're looking for a play-by-play guy,
Yeah,
which is a whole different animal. And a lot of people I know out there are not. I guess he's got to be liked at least 50% of the people. I'm a big Steve Stone fan, okay, personally, because
same.
again, I have a personal relationship with Steve Stone that goes back 15, 20 years. When he is talking on the air, it's like Steve is talking to you over a lunch or a dinner and is explaining baseball to you, especially pitching, which I am a big fan of. A lot of people don't like him because he's not there dropping, exit velo and like more like terms. But if you grab the terms to what he is explaining to you, it makes sense. If you're savvy enough to be like, okay, he's talking about the break, it's a good break. Pitching wise, he's very knowledgeable of the game, and he knows teams very well. So I think that's what I liked about the combination between Steven and Jason. Was that Jason was a great broadcaster, that was witty at times. His baseball acumen of like in-depth diving and giving you like the day-to-day of like what pitching or hitting is all about. He wasn't an expert in, which is great, and he didn't pretend to be, which I think I even liked them even
That
more.
made it better with Steve Stone, because
Correct.
now
Let Steve do his
Steve
thing.
Stone turned back into the sensei, and he can
Correct.
just fucking
Correct.
teach the game.
Correct. I don't like a broadcaster, the play-by-play guy, again, in my personal opinion, who thinks he's a hitting guru and you've never grabbed the bat in your life. That to
Right.
me is, and by the way, I broadcasted Major League Baseball 7 years in radio, and one of the hardest things for me to say when I was talking about hitting or anything was because I needed to decipher something that Hawk had taught me or that Steve Stone had taught me or I had learned watching the game that I had to kind of put there for fans to grab, not making it seem that it was coming from me saying I'm the expert. Because when you haven't played, people don't want to hear that. Or when you're a crappy player, Frank Thomas can go up there and talk about hitting and be like, well, that's Frank Thomas. Ozzie Guillen when it comes to managing and defense. I feel like when you get into that and you never really played at that level, and I think Jason Benetti was really good that he never crossed that line, and him and Stone being sensei and the expert, the great broadcaster, and whoever they find, I think that there's a lot of great names out there. I think that we'll listen. It'll take us some time. But at the end of the day, I think we'll see. Time tells all. Did the White Sox make the better choice on what they think that their fans want? Here's one thing is true, guys.
Yeah.
And I might get in trouble for saying this.
Oh boy.
A huge disconnect between what White Sox fans want and what their team is delivering for them. The White Sox fan want here, the franchise is here. From Sox Fest to who they wanted as a manager to the processes of what they want on how to hiring people, the kind of players they want, they seem to be very, very far off in what kind of on wanting to do what their fan base wants, not just on the way the team is being built, but on things like the broadcast. So from a brand standpoint, I understand the fans don't feel like they're being heard. From that standpoint, I think for the first time ever, I think that's the biggest gap between fans of where they're at currently and the way that the team is being presented to them. I think that's as a brand itself. I don't think like they're being heard from a fan base standpoint because again, if the fans say that they want to hear whoever in the broadcast booth, and that's who they want, that's who you give them. Even if as a franchise you don't think it's the best decision, but those are your listeners, and your listeners again, they're paying for the ticket, and they're paying the ticket to attend. They're paying for the ticket to, they're paying for the TV and watching for advertisement. So I feel like there is a disconnect of, you didn't bring back a fan favorite guy, and I understand that frustration from a fan standpoint. I don't know how much they took that into consideration.
So I just want to ask before we completely leave off the topic, Gonzo, I want to ask you first. If you could handpick any play-by-play guy to fill Jason's shoes, who would you pick?
Well, I was kind of interested. I saw that someone brought up Gordon Beckham getting a full-time shot, and I'd be interested to see how that goes if Gordon has the time for it to match up with Steve Stone. I think that'd be an interesting broadcast. Because I don't like any of the old timers that they tried bringing back when one of the two were absent. So I need someone younger and fresh.
I think tryouts.
Yeah.
Give everybody 20 games, 20, 30 games, split it up, give us different views. Give us different look. Let Gordon do play-by-play. Let Monaco come in and do play-by-play. The kid that used to be on the score.
Mike Monaco is really good too.
Yeah, Monaco's that's a kid from Notre Dame. And then what's the kid from he does the pre and post game show. He used to
McGuffey?
I believe that's him, and he was on the score. He's done a couple games.
Are you talking about Connor McKnight too?
That's him.
Yeah.
I should know his name. I've hung out with the guy plenty of times. Connor, give Connor a shot.
Look at you, big time.
No, not big time. Again, there's so many. When you think broadcasters, I do not think that about managers, by the way. I think that when you're a broadcaster and you're bringing in somebody that's new, you don't really know unless it's somebody that's been somewhere and has a huge name like a Casper. But if you bring someone in brand new that this is like their first big league job, I'm not necessarily listening to minor league baseball or other minor league affiliates. So I can be like, oh, this guy is really, really good. You should bring him in. It's like a brand new face to me, so it'll take time. So I'm not big enough of an expert to say, oh yeah, I knew Jason Benetti I knew that he interned at the score, but I didn't know that he did play-by-play, and was that amazing. So whoever they bring in, I feel like instead of just jumping in and getting married to one guy, just have a free-for-all. Let everybody do a little shot. And
spring training would be a great time to have that audition too.
Just bring out and have what the fans share and bring different elements to the broadcast. Again, it doesn't have to be two people.
I'm not gonna lie, OJ. Like Gonzo's talking about, he don't want a dinosaur in the booth. I'm calling Gary Thorne and Tom Brenneman right now. I need you, old geezers. I need you. It's a cold blue.
I feel like they're gonna fall into someone, so I'm not really too worried about it.
Can he play second base?
But let's transition because they left another talent go. Tim Anderson, the White Sox declined the player option. For me, I felt like that was more culture decision than it was a talent decision.
What do you mean culture? That's I'm going to ask that question very much. What do you mean by culture decision?
There you go, Gonzo. 20 minutes into the show, Gonzo, and
for the same reason why there was only Andrew Vaughn that picked him up off the ground when he got knocked out, with the on the field issues that he had, with the personal issues that he had. I felt like the team wanted to move on, and just allow him to have a fresh start.
This for you, Gonzo. This is definitely for you right now.
That's okay.
There's only one person on this show who has a last name that Tim Anderson says shut the fuck up to. Okay. So most people would think White Sox fans, I'm going to come on here and destroy Tim Anderson, and they did the right move to removing Tim Anderson. Tim Anderson just came off of might have been his worst year ever in his career in Major League Baseball. But the seasons that he had before that and the player that he still shows that he can be, because I don't think his second half was as bad as everyone claimed it to be. I think that even with all the culture issues, and I'm using quotation marks culture because I'm not buying into that Tim Anderson was the cancer on the clubhouse. I think Tim Anderson had issues that became more public than others, but I think there's bigger cancers in the clubhouse, potentially not there anymore or still currently there. That might be a bigger issue than Tim Anderson. So I think that for his production of what he can bring in as not only a shortstop, but someone that can play the second base position when you don't have anyone. And please do not drop me the list of every great minor leaguer in Birmingham. None of those guys are batting champs. None of those guys have hit over 300. None of those guys have produced at the level that Tim Anderson has produced at the big league level. So for $14 million, Tim Anderson could have been caught with 55 kilos of cocaine, and I still would have been like, Tim Anderson's my second baseman, because there's no one in the minor league system, okay, that I can say today as a baseball guy, he is ready to replace Tim Anderson, including Carlson Montgomery. The Seager comparisons. Hold on, anybody. So if you're going to tell me by getting rid of Tim Anderson, you're telling me that you have a better second baseman that you have in system, or that you're going to sign a better second baseman for a long term, or that Colson's going to be your starting shortstop for the next exponential years, which is fine. But for the amount of money, okay, in a season when you said I am not rebuilding, as soon as Tim Anderson's gone, it's an automatic rebuild in my eyes. Just because the level of production that he had, even in a bad year, I think that you could have used his body at $14 million to fill some of these spots that have there. By the way, including the outfield, because if Tim Anderson was to grab his right field's glove and go play right field, his production would be better than anybody that's played that position. So that's just my take on the whole Tim Anderson thing. Regardless of his off the field, by the way, his off the field stuff, I don't consider off the field stuff. He had marital problems. Everyone's had them. Tim didn't commit a crime. Okay, what Tim did, every team has 3 or 4 guys that do that. His stuff just became public, unfortunately. But I don't consider Tim Anderson having off the field problems. Having off the field problems, you have a drug addiction, you got a problem, you got caught with a gun, you're a gang member, you're beating up people, you're getting suspended by the league. Tim Anderson just told a couple other players to F off, flicked off some fans that were bothering him. I don't consider Tim Anderson off the field issues. I feel that Tim Anderson had a bad season. He's got a little spark. Two bad seasons. Okay.
Come on.
Again, here's the thing. I'm going to say this. He had one bad season, and he had another season when he wasn't the best player on the White Sox. So you don't think Tim Anderson could have been a role player in the future of this team? By the way, I'm gonna because Andrew Vaughn barely replaced Jose Abreu. He barely got there, and he did it, and that's fine. And he's the future for the second base and shortstop position for the foreseeable future. For $14 million, they could have had him. Mind you, I'm not saying that they couldn't have traded him. I'm saying you grab him for $14 million, hope that he plays well, and then you move him for better pieces, or keep him for $14 million until Colson gets ready and potentially move him to second or find other options. You just don't let him walk away for $14 million. That's just my take. I don't think $14 million is that much money.
You're not picking up Liam's option, and you're gonna move Grandal's money too. So, the $14 million shouldn't have been an issue. You're not gonna be able to replace the man or the player, like OJ just said. You're not.
And marketing wise, you just wasted the last 4 years. Changed the game, the swagger. Basically, you said we don't believe in this guy, and we'll pull the plug on him beforehand. Because again, he was the highlight reel.
What's gonna be the new slogan?
Well, again, in anything, here's the part, Justin, that again, going back to identity, whatever the slogan is, I'm going to call BS when the slogan comes out. And that's one of the issues that I had with Pedro Grifol. I know we're not talking about him now, but I have to say this. And we tweeted about it from the Guillen baseball account. You're going to tell me that you don't like this team now after Tim Anderson leaves. Really? So why didn't you say that when he was still on the team? Because he was scared that Tim Anderson would grab the microphone and call you out on all the weird stuff that you're doing or that you're not doing. So I think it was oh, let's get Tim out of here. And now everyone's like, oh, the team is great. Okay, maybe the team is better culture-wise. That's great. But somebody's got to play second base and shortstop.
More importantly, OJ, somebody got to hit leadoff.
No, we got what's his name? Popeye. What's Popeye's name? And we got the Venezuelan Lenin Sosa. Yeah, we got Popeye. We got Lenin. We got Seager. We got Baby Seager. Again, that's fine. But then don't tell me in that same sentence that you're looking for that is not a rebuild. Here's my best part, and this is why AJ Brzezinski was calling out Chris, and Chris can't get mad at this. You're saying you want to find more athletic players with versatility, yet you don't sign Tim Anderson. If anything, Tim Anderson is athletic and versatile.
You don't
like those are his
the best athlete in the organization.
Correct. Like the guy played second base, and no one had the cojones to say, "Hey, Tim, you're going to play second base for the White Sox." He can play short. I'm not saying he's a Gold Glover, but he definitely can play short in the big league level and produce at that level. And I can guarantee you, if Fernando Tatis Jr. can play right field, Tim Anderson can play right field.
I believe there's some aggressive decisions they can make to replace Tim, but if they don't make
share them.
I will in a second. We'll get there. If they don't make those aggressive decisions, though, then I believe it's a really bad look for that first offseason move to decline the option for $14 million. That'd be terrible.
You could have traded him for a pitcher. Here's the thing: you got Dylan Cease for the next 2 years. You have to compete in one of those years in order to make the keeping Dylan feasible. Or you could have said this is a weak division, so we're going to spread a couple players here and there, and we'll rebuild real quickly. I just don't see a quick rebuild without Tim Anderson.
I mean, again, if they get aggressive, I see how they can do it.
But I mean, they're not gonna get aggressive because they had their chance to be aggressive when Marcus Semien hit the market. They had their chance to get aggressive when Corey Seager hit the market.
But that's too aggressive, by the way. Like, that's aggressive. Like, you're going all in when you're not even supposed to go in, because that takes you back to Liam Hendricks.
And
okay,
what we're going to end up doing, Gonzo, is going to be like what Ryan Poles did with Roquan, replacing him with Tremaine Edmonds. And the only difference is Roquan's a better player for $2 million less.
Well, you're talking hard stuff for me. This is NFL.
Roquan's not better than
right now for
Edmonds.
What the White Sox want to do right now, as far as financially and money wise, replacing Tim Anderson, they're going to move sideways at best, with a big chance of the next guy being worse than Tim Anderson.
By the way, can I bring up the contract that the former front office signed for Clevinger and for Liam Hendricks? That Liam is still making $15 million. I thought that they would keep him because his buyout clause was, you're going to make the same amount of money. We're just going to spread it out for you and tax diversify your 15 mil, Liam. I was like, just sign the guy. You're still paying him 15 million, either now or later, but you're still paying him 15 million. And then you're told Clevinger, what, $4 million to go home? Of course he's going to decline it. He just made $14 million sitting down.
Yeah.
From what I understood, they're paying $2 million a year for 10 years.
You're still paying it.
Yeah.
Maybe the next front office is going to pay for it.
But the cap hit, though, is the difference on that, because you can save $14 million on next year.
And use it how? That's the thing. How are they going to use it? You would have made that move if you brought Tim Anderson back and said, "Oh, we'll save the cap because we want to sign this guy and eventually move him down the line."
But that's what they're doing. They're clearing cap space right now for next year.
For this, meaning for the next season, not 2025.
For 24.
So they're going to bring
for 24 eventually.
So when you look at the 24, okay, and the top free agents,
Justin.
Okay, and the top free agents, okay, because I'm going again and to argue that this class, even though it has Ohtani, okay, who is not worth $40 million if he's just going to hit, he's not worth that, okay, and whoever signs Ohtani, here's the receipt. Keep this one. Whoever signs Ohtani is going to be holding the bag at the end of the day, because that's the team that's going to falter by signing and thinking that they just hit the splash. It's going to be a marketing splash, but wins and losses, that's too much capital on one guy. Unless he pitches, it might be worth it. So who are the top free agents, though, when we're looking at this?
Before we jump to the external look here, let's quickly wrap up this whole conversation with, there's a rumor with Dylan Cease, which should lead to this external look. The Dylan Cease rumors are heating up as the winter meetings are approaching. Do you see Do you see Chris Getz moving Dylan Cease? I certainly wouldn't, but
But why? Okay, I have a question, Gonzo. Why wouldn't you? Because you're a fan of Dylan. I wouldn't move Dylan because I like seeing Dylan more often than not, and it's cool having him in Chicago. That's why I wouldn't move Dylan. But why are you not moving Dylan? Because he's your favorite player. You again, we're separating. If I was in Chris Getz's shoes, Ozzie Guillen Jr., considering the relationship I have with Dylan, meaning we're friends. Okay, if I can't sign Dylan to an extension, I am going to move you for the most amount of players and value that I can. And I will tell Dylan this to his face while I'm making the move. Like, hey, bro, you don't want to sign here for this much money? I want more. Well, that's all we can afford, man. Let's part ways and we'll see if we can meet again once again on a team in the future. That's what Chris Getz needs to do. Because again, we're going to go Abreu. We're going to add Tim Anderson. Not only did the rebuild not work, but the rebuild on the rebuild is not bringing back any players. At least with Chris Sale, you got Moncada and Kopech, and with other players, you brought guys back. Now in this rebuild, not only did it not work, you're not bringing anybody back in return. You're not bringing any players back. So you can't let Dylan just walk because you think that you're going to be able to sign him. You got to be realistic and have your feet on the ground and say, hey, can I sign this guy? Can I ask this girl to the prom? Is she going to say yes? Or am I in way over my head? Of course, Dylan Cease is one of the best pitchers, and I would love to have him in every Major League Baseball team that I would start. He's a top 5 pitcher in the American League right now.
So my understanding in the press conference with Jerry with introducing Chris Getz was that this is going to be on Chris Getz's hand moving forward, and with his aggressiveness, it all relies on Chris Getz. Jerry gave the resources of his budget to Rick Hahn, and Hahn just didn't spend it wisely. So my understanding is Getz is going to have free reign to do what he wants. And in that mindset, if I was Chris Getz, I'm keeping Chris Sale because, well, one, I'm extending him next offseason. But with having him in mind already, I know I need at least 2 top dogs to have real success in this modern era. And one of those dogs I'm going to be getting in free agency to go with Chris Sale. So I'm spending big money on this offseason on one of those dogs to go with Sale. Next offseason, I'm extending C, so I have my 2 dogs extended out.
Okay, so you're building. So you're telling me, okay, so the market out there right now for Lucas Giolito is $80 million. Okay, that's what they're saying for Lucas Giolito. Good for Lucas. I'm going to win a bet if he gets paid 100. I hope he gets it because I win my bet. You're telling me that to extend Chris Sale, mind you, that's not Chris Sale, to extend Cease, okay, who he is currently, when you look at the comparison, okay, on how old he is, okay, and potential, okay, he's not necessarily Garrett Cole with the hardware that he had when he went to New York, but at the age of his, meaning how old he is, so he's 27 years old, so he's in the front end of 30, okay, and he's been very healthy. I think that he's going to ask between $35 to $45 million a season, okay, and he's probably going to ask for a contract that's going to put him in a place for at least 10 years, okay. So if you go on the bottom end of that, and we're saying 35, and I think 35 might be very generous for them to ask, meaning for an extension with a team that he's currently on. That means that they're going to have to give him $350 million. Okay? Do you think, historically speaking, they have not given somebody $100 million, but they're going to jump from $75 million to $350 million? And that's on the low end. Because if Scott Boras pulls up one of the magical Scott Boras numbers and for some crazy deal gets 45 to 50 million from the Orioles, from the Braves, from the Yankees, because this is the best part. He's going into free agency in a time when every big market team is looking for pitching. Pitching is like water right now in a desert, okay, if Lucas is getting 80 million. So if you go 45 for 10, that's $450 million. You guys think Gonzo that the White Sox will do that? Then you have a lot more hope than them, because I don't see them signing a starting pitcher for 450.
I don't see his number there yet.
So okay, so 30 million. So that means
this offseason, your top name right now is Snell. And the market value for him is starting at 25 right now.
Okay, so how much money do you think would you give Dylan Cease right now for 8-year contract that you think Cease would take? Not only Cease, because you don't have to convince just Cease. You got to convince Scott Boras.
I'd start it in that same conversation as Blake Snell right now.
25 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so 25 million over what? 8 or 10?
What's his age?
27.
Blake
And mind
Snell's
you,
30.
mind you, you still have to pay him plus a little bit more because you don't want him to go to free agency. So you got to butter it up. So okay, let's say 25 million over 8.
That's what, 7 to 8 years at 25.
200. That's 200 mil.
Yeah. And that's about the same price that I'm paying for one of these other guys.
Okay, number one, I don't think that he would sign for 25 million a year. Maybe he would, but I don't think Scott Boras would go for that. I would sign it if I like Chicago a lot, but I'm saying there's obstacles here. And when he says I'm putting it on Chris Getz, unless Chris Getz comes with a bag load of money, I don't think that you convince Cease and Scott Boras to sign. The only thing convincing him here is cash in years. I don't think that it's going to be like, oh, I like where I live in Chicago. I like the fans. I like the logo. I just don't see that being. I think Scott Boras is the best at fighting that. Like he's the best for a reason, and he's going to get top dollar on his players. So I still think, in my opinion, even though on paper and on all the apps it says $25 million is what he should be getting, I still think you pay more than that. And again, by all means, if someone is going to get the $300 million, I hope it's Dylan Cease. But I think that if they cannot get to that point, okay, if Chris Getz does not have 300 million, 350 million to pay Cease, then you have to be realistic with yourself and say, I know that I'm going to part ways with him. I'm going to get the biggest payday for this guy moving down the road. And then instead of looking for one guy externally, because you're going to have one guy internally, then you have to go and then say, we have to look for two guys externally, because obviously then that's a different conversation. I just think today is going to be very hard extending Cease with considering who his agent is in Scott Boras. I just think that it's very tough competing against Scott Boras.
I just don't think, because I feel Cease would sign that, but I don't think the agent has that leverage coming off the season that Dylan had to get to those numbers that he wants to get to. So, in saying that, like I said before, I'm not extending Cease until 25 because we have next year to see where he really falls with his performance. So that wraps up our White Sox talk for the at least the topics recently. Now we're going to go to our external look of what we would do if we were Chris Getz.
Wait, quick on that one, Gonzo. So you're telling me that you're rooting against Sale in 25, or you're rooting for him? Because best case scenario for Chris Sale, he goes and has a Cy Young type season, and then you went from 25 to whatever number he wants. Because mind you, Ohtani's also going to set the market if he decides to pitch and hit. So again, that 1 year.
You mean Cease, not Sale.
Cease. I keep saying Sale because again, sorry.
So
Cease.
no, I mean obviously I'm rooting for Cease, and for me it really doesn't matter because we have the caps. We have, if you look at the books right now, we have the space to make it work.
Okay.
But again, like if we can't get to that middle ground, then yeah, you're gonna have to trade him next year.
Cal Control, he just got a release right now. There you go. That's your third starter.
So going to the external outlook with free agency and trades. Obviously, we broke down the internal look. We know what they need right now. They need a second base, right fielder, short or center, catcher, at least until Cuero gets up.
They have a catcher.
3 pitchers.
They have a catcher.
I said, yeah, we got one catcher.
Corey Lee.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying they're going to bring in a second backup, like they're bringing in a backup catcher / starter.
Yeah. Yeah. Mostly
Salvador
starter.
Perez.
Hold on. So then we got 3 starting pitchers, and that's about it. I mean, you can go with one relief pitcher, but
who's the starting pitcher?
We can fill that up, huh?
Who's the starting pitcher?
The 2.
Well, you said they have 3.
No, I said we have to sign 3.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say, because right now they got Cease,
Tuki
Tuki-san, who's a starter.
And
Kopech, we don't know.
I would
Davis
go.
Mills is coming back from injury.
I'm going Cease and
Davis
Estrani.
Mills.
Martin. Davis
Martin. I'm sorry. Davis Mills.
Oh, he's signed though. Yeah. So guys that have actually, because I think Kopech, they're going to have to decide what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, if it's me, I'm
Okay.
moving Kopech to the bullpen. I'm putting Cease and Estrani in rotation, and then signing
So it could be. So it would be in the bullpen. It'd be like Santos, Kopech, big lefty, not named Bummer.
Yeah,
actually, I would make him my closer.
So the bullpen, you're gonna have Kopech, Leisure, Cronin, Burke, Thompson, Crochet, Eater.
I actually want to see Luis Patino get some more run in the rotation too.
Yeah,
I actually don't mind that bullpen.
Yeah, we already talked about that with the internal look. So when I was talking about getting aggressive, I'm just going to start at second base.
This is going to be interesting, by the way. Just what minute are
I'm
we
making
in?
a trade. Yeah, 41 minutes in. I'm making a trade to the Rockies. I'm going to get Brendan Rodgers here for $4.2 million. And he's got another year of arbitration and 25, and that's it. So because the arbitration years, the trade value is going to be low. You can get him for a good quality price. If you don't like him, I mean, that'd be my first option. My second option is going for a guy in his last year of arbitration, and that's Gleyber Torres for $14.2 million. So that money deal that or OJ, you said, who can you replace for $14 million? Well, you can do it with Gleyber, who had 2 better years than TA did. Yeah, go ahead.
Have you seen Gleyber's numbers?
Yeah.
And you still think they're better than TA's?
Yes.
Okay. He does bring the power aspect that everybody says.
Hey,
Gonzo,
go
long, team go long.
I was thinking about at second base. What about Isaiah Kiner-Falefa on a 1 year? For some good depth.
I like that.
Middle.
I like
but
that.
The talk was for him was going to shortstop.
Okay, so Gleyber Torres, so who are you giving up? Number one, Gleyber ain't going to be cheap for the trade, or neither is Rodgers.
No, they both are. Due to the arbitration, yeah.
So you're going to trade a sack of baseballs and then get them back.
I mean, you're going to probably trade some quality pitching prospects.
That's what I'm saying. So what pitching prospects are you parting ways with? You're
probably going to start, at least for Rodgers and some of these other guys I'm going to bring up, you're probably starting with Sean Burke.
So in a season where you need
Matthew
pitching,
Thompson. Well, again, these are starting pitching prospects that weren't going to be in my rotation to begin with.
Okay. So we got Gleyber and we got Rodgers.
But Rodgers is, for me, first priority. For a second base trade, I'm putting more emphasis on Rodgers with Colorado.
So Rodgers is your first move. Gleyber is your second move.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because with the money aspect of it, with the needs, I want to go with Rodgers and spend more money.
How much money is Rodgers going to get?
4.2 in arbitration this year. That's the target.
It's a little bit more affordable than 14.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you got any more to add before we go? I was going to move to right field.
I think second baseman, we're going to see either Popeye or Lenny Sosa, and I think that you fix the problem internally, because unless you are going full, let's try to scramble and put something quick together and strike lightning in a bottle with the great Pedro Grifol, you don't sign anybody. You get to find out who's really, really, really down in the minor leagues, can come and make a major league impact. There was no other greatest player in the minor leagues than Joan Moncada. We've seen when my boy's been struggling in the big leagues. If you hit 350 in the minor leagues, you're probably hitting 250 in the big leagues, unless you're a special case. And there has not been anybody that they have called up since maybe Crochet, that when you see him on the mound or you see him in the game, you go, wow, that guy's Miguel Cabrera. That guy's Grady Sizemore. That guy is, what's the kid's name that just won the Orioles, that just won the, Carroll for, yeah, like he's not a dude. You don't say, wow, that guy's a dude. He's not a Connor Burner. I went to the Hawks game, don't know nothing about hockey. I saw the guy warming up. I said, that's the best player on this team. That's the best player in this whole arena. And I didn't know We got to find out who Sosa is. We got to find out who Popeye is. We got to find out everybody that you guys are obsessed with in the minor leagues. If this is the year that they have a year to be able to put it together, and if Pedro's such a great groomer and mentor and all that, if you have somebody in the minor leagues that can play that position, I think you put him in there.
Well,
So I would go.
OJ, that's why I said Isaiah Connor for left, because if you look at what type of contract he's going to get, he's not going to get like anything that's going to block any of those guys from playing second base.
Nope.
He'll just be a depth piece, basically Leary 2.0. And with the injury history of the White Sox, you don't have to worry about IKF getting overexposure, because he can obviously handle 320 to 400 at bats a season.
This will never happen because he's related to us, but our cousin, Eddie Adrianza, who has more than 10 years in the big leagues, never gotten a shot to play every day, not as of yet, because of the battles with his injury, could be very, very affordable. And you can platoon him at second and at short and give guys at bats on both ends, and it will not also block anybody coming in. And he will catch the ball, and he will give you good at bats, having a great winter. But unless you can pull off one of these two moves, by the way, if they pull off the Roger move for 4.2 because of who he is as a player, that could be a diamond in the rough because of the potential. Glaber at 14 might be a little bit too high for my taste and the way of the player that he is. But again, it sounds sexy. But if you can get someone like Connor or someone like Eddie Adrianza to kind of be that bridge gap in 1 year, I would stay away from bringing in the Elvis Andrews. We tried that last year, bringing in a veteran guy that's going to block.
Stop with that.
I'm not doing that. You're either going to bring the second baseman you're trying to sign for the future, or you give somebody a shot just to bridge that gap and see what you have there.
Rogers has versatility because he can also go over to third base just in case something happens.
Well, Moncada, by the way, they got to think about Moncada's gone after this year. There's no way that they're picking up a $25 million option.
No, which I'm assuming Montgomery and Ramos are coming up next year. So, all right, right field, my first priority would be going to trade with Justin's Boston Red Sox and getting Verdugo. Verdugo is
you. All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
Who are you giving up for Verdugo?
Verdugo, again, he's on arbitration. So, again, you have to start somewhere. So, but I'm saying these are my trade options. I'll try to get it done, but his value is at $9.2 million.
You want to know what's crazy? I was thinking that as soon as you said right field, the White Sox make a trade. But at the end of the day, like look at how much success we've had at the position after Jermaine died. It's like I can't really expect us to improve at the position no matter who we sign. It's like the Bears quarterback situation. It's been a black hole. Honestly, Gonzo, Alex Verdugo sounds good. I want the White Sox to sign my boy Randall Grichuk on a 1-year deal, similar as IKF, because another hole on the roster that nobody is talking about, backup center field has been fucking abysmal, and we have been unprofessional at that position too. I mean, we've had fourth outfielders, but none of them been viable behind Luis Robert in center field. At least you can move a guy like, Adam Duvall or Randall Grichuk into center field on some days where Luis needs a day off or a weekend off.
Yeah.
I would like if they were thinking about the future. They mess up not bringing him in early on, and they use the word athletic and versatility. Remember, you can always move Pantera to right. Okay, you try to move for one of the guys in Arizona. Alec Thomas, bring a guy that can potentially lead off. You bring speed in.
Yeah.
And again, I love the Grichuk situation because it's just 1 year. Okay, I like the Verdugo. 9.2 is not a lot of money, and I think he's going to go off this year because he knows he's going after a payday.
And he could and he could slide in behind Luis Robert in center field too.
Correct.
And you don't lose that much.
Here's the other one that's interesting though. If they are going wild and crazy, and you talked about potentially signing a guy for the 100 mil mark, there's a free agent right now who I was very shocked that they did not pick up his option. in Teoscar Hernandez. Okay, at 31 years old, he was making the market value for him is like right around 17 million. Again, the dangerous part of him, okay, is that he is okay, potentially going to play a position where they've had really bad luck. There's a player you haven't mentioned yet, and I think that they're going to consider this player just because they're obsessed with the Kansas City Royals, and this player can play two positions. I think that we are going to see them with Merrifield, and he potentially will be leading off because I think that at 34 years old, they're going to say that he will be a great clubhouse leader.
I was going
and
to
he
say,
will
you want to
play.
talk about culture? I want the new regime watching Whit Merrifield tuck his jersey in, lace his cleats up every day,
Yeah.
just being around a guy like that.
So it'll be Weatherfield, Benetti, basically Royals a couple years ago. So I could see them going after him at right field and second base and platooning them and having a little.
I'm gonna see what my boy Joe Randa doing. See if they want to get the gang back together.
But I think that this conversation going down, I just don't think that they see Oscar Colas as a solution moving forward. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think they exposed him. I think that unfortunately, my prediction that he was not going to be better than Diane Visato is coming to fruition because I don't see them giving him a chance every day anymore. And they might move away from that, especially when they said athletic. We want to get more versatile. I can see them using Colas as the scapegoat and not moving away from him.
Yeah, and the other guy that I was going to target, I would actually get both of them because I'm going to try to trade Eloy out of here. Santander in Baltimore.
Santander.
That's Santander. That's 14.1 million. And I would get both because I would DH Santander and he'd be also my utility outfielder when he's not DH.
By the way, is there a place for Eloy on the Orioles?
DH.
They don't have a full-time DH, right?
Yeah.
So I think that he has a very unique market because I think that if he is healthy, he can still produce. Where a team would take a shot at him, and from a production standpoint, just I even thought about like Cleveland, like just random teams that usually go get a DH. The Marlins, they just lost Soler. So I think that there's a market for Eloy that no one's really talking about. And then if you do make that move,
you just mentioned not to cut you off, big dog, but you just mentioned the Diamondbacks. That's a team that's in desperate need of right-handed power.
Yeah. So you can lure back any type of return, again, be it a pitcher or being a position player where he could probably fix. Again, when you're looking at those teams, you're looking at Eloy. If you can bring any type of catcher that might be MLB ready, and have him battle out with Corey Lee. What I don't want to happen with Corey Lee, and I don't think anybody in the White Sox moving forward should have a position given to them. I want to see guys battle it out. I really like the Cubs situation where they made Nico Horner fight for it and eventually played as well into being a second baseman, but lost his shortstop position. The White Sox don't have anyone, even including Coulson, where I say this guy is going to be a starter every single day because every person they've done that with, other than Andrew Vaughn, pretty much not done a really good job. And again, I think Andrew's done a really good job because he had a battle for that spot against Abreu and really show it. And he was playing out of position and whatnot. But again, he was fighting against Larry, fighting against Gavin Sheets. So it wasn't his position, even though I told people it was. So I really want to see competition. So whatever happens in that catching position, which I think they're going to try to do everything possible to bring in over Salvador Perez, I would like to see a younger player and then really battle it out between Corey Lee and whoever that backup catcher is going to be.
Yeah.
Or again, starting backup. Like no one's a starter, no one's a backup.
So another name right field I would keep an eye on would be Lane Thomas in Washington. Definitely, you'd have to give up more for that guy, but again, I prioritize Verdugo and Santander. But again, a name OJ I want to bring up at catcher. That would be a veteran type to go with Lee would be Mitch Garver. His market value right now is at 10 million. He'd be an interesting cat to bring in.
Well, and with Mitch Garver too, he's gonna be in the line. You're gonna have two catchers in the starting lineup if you sign Mitch Garver, because you're not going to sacrifice Corey Lee's at bats. You'll just put Mitch Garver at the DH spot. So, because you won't, because you'll do exactly what the Rangers did, having Garver as the DH with Heim behind the plate.
Yeah, which
What do
is
you
fine
think?
because you can move Verdugo over to left if you need to, put Sandier in right, and then put Garver at DH. Like you can play with that.
And
with those numbers.
Benintendi goes to
One
the
thing that's
bench.
going to be interesting, because I know the Sox, and again, it's really hard to predict because it's a different front office. So, and Tony's still involved, but again, I think it's totally different when the names like Matt Chapman that are still out there in the free agency. And we're going to find out very soon and very quickly that if the first move is made for a guy that's an average player above 30, that if you make one move for one of those guys, that you actually should just make a move and kind of try to strike lightning in a bottle and not do a half rebuild, half kind of middle of the road players. Like if you bring Salvador Perez, then sign Whit Merrifield, sign Chapman, sign a right fielder, and kind of really put it all together as quickly as possible. And if you're going all youngsters, we lost 101 games with like our team. We're going to go young and see if we can win more than 101 games. I think if you do that, it's going to be very interesting. There's a couple pitchers in the free agent market that I always like pitching, and the Sox not having any of it. I think that you could sign a big name pitcher and make it the number one or number two to Cease. That if you were to walk away from Cease, you still have one guy left there. Because I think that's the best market right now is the starting pitcher market based on who they are and what their age is. Considering any other position, there's a lot of guys that you can fill in, but I think the biggest impact on a player that's a franchise player is in the starting pitching position.
So when I was building this outlook, right, I was making trades with second base, right field, because I'm saving my money up for this pitching like you're talking about. My main priority, Mr. Yamamoto, 25 million starting. He's my top priority.
Over Nola?
Yes. Due
Really?
to age, yes.
You're thinking
Yamamoto's 25?
Hold on. So you're thinking more that he is going to be more, I guess you can say Ohtani, but again, he's a two-way player than Irabu.
Cody Senga, the numbers he put up in the bigs his first year. And this is a guy in Yamamoto that has higher
with
talent
Kodai
level.
Senga, it was a tale of two halves. He was a walk machine in the first half. The second half, once he got acclimated with this side of baseball, you really see him start to settle in. But Gonzo, Yamamoto,
And
Gonzo, that's a you're going for. I'm gonna one up you, and I think that the guy they're gonna go after, just because they're comfort level guys, and they're gonna play the Grifol is Cubano, and we have Pantera and all this Cubano, and we're gonna all be hanging out. And at the age of 26, you're gonna have that kid Yariel Rodriguez try to come up and pitch in the big leagues. With 26 years old, I think the White Sox are gonna say, "Hey, let's go after this." We got the Contreras history book, the Mini Minoso. There's your marketing. We'll have him and Pantera sitting down together with Grifol, reading them stories of the Cuban history, and he will be your starter for the future. So I'm thinking more Cuban Yariel than Yamamoto, my friend.
Wow.
But I'm saying, like, I'm talking aggressive, man. We if I'm Chris Getz.
By the way, Yariel's not aggressive, and everyone's talking that he's one of the best top prospect pitchers of all time.
Out of Cuba.
So let me ask you, Gonzo. Let me ask you, if the White Sox. So I think we're all on the same page because we all want the White Sox. If they do take a big swing, it should be in the rotation. That's where they could have more success. What about Sonny Gray?
At 34 years old? Nah, I think Sonny Gray has to go to a team that's going to win, like look ready to win.
Because Baltimore, I could give him a modest 3-year deal.
No chance. I wouldn't. That's Lance Lynn all over again.
He's better than Lance Lynn.
No, I don't care if he's
In
10
better
times
shape
better
than
than Lynn.
Lance
At
Lynn.
34 years old, you're at the back end. You bring a guy like that if you're ready to win, not in a staff that you don't know that
We
is
are
established.
prepared every night to kick your ass,
No.
OJ.
No, yeah, great. By the
But
way, Chris Getz, the first move that Chris Getz needs to make. And people are going to say that I am saying this because of the sperm race that I won. Okay. But it is not true. Take him out completely out of the equation. I actually like Charlie, who's a bench coach, a lot better options. Pedro's leash has to be so short. Okay. So short because there is nothing that he did, nothing, absolutely zero. And his offseason has gotten worse because he is now becoming a guy where even the media is showing up and saying, this guy's just a climber. Like anything Getz says, he just goes out and repeats. It's getting to a point where he talks about players when they leave after he said that he was obsessed with them and loved them. And I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I don't care how toxic players are in the clubhouse. You need the players in the clubhouse to fight for you. And there's only so many times a baseball player can say, this guy's full of it. Because when he goes into his meeting and starts saying that, we're the right people here, that we're the right guys here, there's a lot of guys that left the team that are friends with a lot of guys in there, a lot of great players that were on that team last year, like Berger, like, for example, TA, that the comments that he has made, I don't know. You can't lose something you never had. So I don't think he ever had the clubhouse. So I'm not going to say he lost it because I don't think he ever got it. But it's going to be interesting because if Charlie Montoya was to come in and say, hey, new look, new this is me, Charlie, I'm the guy in charge now, that's a different story than Pedro and all the stuff that he said. They can look up the receipts, the tweet again saying, does this guy not know that we have video of everything that he's said since day one? So it's gotten to the point where you're not impressed by his X's and O's. You have a staff now that you really have to manage because it's a young bullpen, a young staff, and that could be a disaster. You have young players and his history of not playing guys, of
Yeah.
sitting guys down. I just think that it's all coming together. Again, unless he's cool with like Chris Getz just saying, hey, we're going to make the lineup for you. We're going to go do this. And you're just basically going to sit there and talk about offense and defense. But that's a big take on how they go, either to win it all or to rebuild it all. They need to make a decision on that quick. And I'm going to be honest with you, there's a lot of people today on the fence on Chris Getz because he has had some positive things. I think his coaching staff that he brought in with Marcus Thames and Butera and the guys that he brought in, great coaches. They got great resumes, really hard-nosed players. I like that, regardless of what their philosophy is. We'll see how they do. And then their front office hirings with Barfield and Bannister, solid guys with solid resumes. So Chris has had some moments of just clarity, and he's made some good points. But I think a lot of people are on the fence with him because he is sticking with Pedro. So I think that's going to be an interesting move. And I'm going to be honest with you, that's a conversation if you're a top free agent. Okay, especially these guys like the Nolas, like the Yamamotos. Those are guys who are asking you, who's going to be the manager here next year? Is it this guy? Okay, that's the big difference too when you're building in the future. Guys are going to ask you, hey, who's the skipper here? And when you have a guy that his credentials a little bit better, and again, Charlie did a great job in Toronto. He got axed out because he wanted to do it his way, and he was hard on the players. It was more about the players not responding to him because he was too hard on them, not because he was a bad manager. So he's had success. So it's going to be interesting how they move forward on that because I think that in the free agent market, that's something that they look into.
So after Yamamoto, my last two guys I would go after would be Sean Manea. His market value is at $12 million.
Let it go.
Let it go.
No.
Oh man, what is this? 5 years in a row?
Why let it go? This is an inning eater guy.
Oh my god!
You need looking at what's out there.
Explain Blake Snell then.
Okay. Let me ask you this: What in God's name is the point of an innings eater if he's throwing batting practice?
What do you mean batting practice? His ERA was 3 last year.
Come on, bro.
By the way, he was pitching in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Good. Well, you're going to compare Sanford again. That's a big say. Again, if you're going to go Sean Manaea, okay, in my opinion, if you go Sean Manaea, this team is ready to make a run at the division. You're not bringing Sean
Again,
Manaea to test out.
I'm getting aggressive.
No,
And
correct, aggressive. So I don't mind it. Again, I would like Blake Snell over
I
him.
don't. Well, obviously, but
I'm just saying, if you're going to get aggressive.
OJ, Cease, Yamamoto, 1-2. All right, I'm
Gonzo,
filling out my
Gonzo,
rotation on
Sean
at this
Manaea's
point.
ERA was a 4.4.
I have a question.
Hold up.
So you like Manaea more than Clevinger?
For the money, because I'm talking money right now. For the
So how much
value.
is he going to be? He is signed for 2 years, $25 million. So he's probably going to ask for the same amount of money, 12 maybe, Manaea, or less.
Dropped. It's the value dropped less. It's at 12.
Okay.
Clev is like 16. So
yeah, Clev about to be a rich man.
Yeah, and that's why, because thing with San Fran is he started the season last year in the bullpen. They put him in the bullpen, not the rotation. So I think that fucked up with him when he was in 4 or 5 years with the A's in the starting rotation, eating up.
I mean, but he wasn't
innings.
good. How are you going to put him in the
What do you mean
rotation?
he wasn't good? I don't see eye to eye with you on Sean Manaea when he was in Oakland. He was up
Plesac,
there. And
so who's Plesac with right now? He's in AAA with somebody. He's on somebody's roster, right?
Ain't he with Cleveland still?
He's with Cleveland, right?
But I was going to wrap it up after Manaea. My third guy would be Jack Flaherty for $11 million, 28-year-old.
That's the guy. I don't think he was as bad as he was last year, Gonzo. I think that's one of the guys that you could probably strike lightning in a bottle with.
Yeah, I'm doing that with both of them because I think both of them were in the right places.
Gonzo, can you put this on paper? Because I'm going to be honest with you. If you're able to pull this off, okay, and it says here, Plesac elected free agency following the season on October 13th. So he's a free agent. So everybody knows that I love Zach. He's a guy that I've been so up on his potential. Sign him, put him in the Cats project. Let's see what do you think Cats can do with him. He's an analytical guy. Take a long shot at him. Guys like that. But again, if you put this in there and you're around the 180 mark.
I was going to break it down in like a couple seconds here.
Oh, you were? I'm saying, is it under 180?
It's right there. It's like 182.
So if you pull this off, if you're telling me that you put together a lineup with all the moves, even if it's like just 50% of what you said, names-wise, because the names that you mentioned, I think you put them all together. I think that you could compete for the division, meaning you're not losing 101 games.
Which is why, OJ, this is why I said I disagreed with you earlier when we were talking about Timmy, because I said if they are aggressive, I believe they can turn this around real quick. But it relies on how aggressive Chris.
Well, correct, and you're right about saying the aggressive part. I was going more like they're going to rebuild and like take longer and kind of let their own homegrown guys do it. But the names that you mentioned out there, the way that you laid it out, if money wise, again, and I haven't done the math. You're better at values. You're really good at values of like what players are worth. Obviously, you guys are listening to the show and watching to the show. I'm friends with two guys that I don't know how much money they were going to make, which I'm about to text and say you're about to be really, really rich dudes. I'm never paying for anything for you guys ever again. But
and one of those is one of my favorites too.
So I'm just saying, like, so from a value standpoint, if you're able to put this together, okay, mind you, we're three dudes on a show that love baseball, loves talking this. We're using public information. We're not experts at this. We all have day jobs. We would love to work in the game of baseball and be able to make these decisions. But if two dudes that are constantly talking White Sox baseball, who are nothing special out of the ordinary, okay, there's no geniuses here. If you could put together, okay, in an hour and 9 minutes, a lineup that looks like they can somewhat compete. By the way, even with Grifol as a manager, mind you, under $190 million. This is my concern now. How come the White Sox front office can't do that?
And I'll get there in a second. So those were my three names: Yamamoto, Manaea, Flaherty. Two other guys. So if I struck on Yamamoto, then I would rest on Rodriguez, or I was thinking Trevor Bauer. His market value Yeah, his market value is looking at like 21 million. Yeah, that was looking interesting. And then the other Japanese, this is an under the radar guy, kind of like the Rodriguez that you brought up, the Cuban, the lefty, the Japanese lefty, Imanga, I can't pronounce it,
I
but
like him because he's a lefty, though.
yeah,
You got his
yeah,
name. I don't know. I'm horrible at pronouncing the Japanese names. I like him because I think everybody else is going to jump on him. I actually like him more than the Cuban guy, to be honest with you. I'm staying away from the Cuban starter
I
if I
would
was them.
like if I got Yamamoto, like why not go after instead of Manea with that value,
Yeah,
bump it up a
he's
bit and
another
get
Gonzo. You
Amanega.
remember that guy for the Yankees, Kei Igawa, Japanese left-handed guy.
Yeah, yeah.
That's 2.0 you're talking about right now.
So if you can get all those guys again, the names that we're throwing out there. Before I thought it was like unfeasible to be able to reconstruct in 1 year, kind of like put it
Mm,
together. And I still think that the part that's very interesting, okay, and what I like about your plan, and again, we're debating against the Tim Anderson thing. I guess I have more value on Tim than most, but is that you didn't block any position of guys that are up and coming. Because
no.
number one prospect is Colson. I would say
Mhm.
two is Brian Ramos. I just actually somebody told me that they have Brian Ramos higher than Colson, and the person that told me this, I highly respect when it comes to scouting. So first person to tell me that.
Gonzo's
Even
about to cream right
no,
now.
Gonzo. By the way, Gonzo was big on Brian Ramos when as soon as they drafted him. So Brian Ramos is a Gonzo guy through and through from the beginning. Gonzo takes 100% credit for that. If Brian Ramos ever pans out, he's been on him since day one. But somebody told me that I respect in baseball because again, everyone's on Colson. Okay, everyone. It's not just you guys. It's literally everyone in baseball. It's a huge free prospect. Everyone in the game thinks he's good. So if he does not make it, everyone in baseball is wrong. Brian Ramos, on the other hand, a lot of people like him, but they don't have him higher than Colson. Again, in the big league level, this could happen. So those are the only two guys I think position wise that are I can see in everyone's prediction in MLB them being on the team in the next 2 years. But the other positions that you guys are replacing, I don't see any pitchers coming up. We don't have a young Dylan Cease in the minor leagues. We don't have a young Chris Sale in the minor leagues. We don't have Crochet in the minor league. They need pitching. So if you can use this money like Gonzo's doing right now and build on that pitching, mind you, starting pitching, because I said earlier in the show, I like the bullpen. I like the
Yeah.
Crochet, the Santos, the Kopech. I think a manager that has an acumen for handling bullpen guys and letting Ethan Katz kind of do his thing with his pitchers, I think that you have a bullpen already that you can compete with and then maybe add one or veteran or two down the road if you need it. But I really believe that you need to rebuild on this staff as soon as possible. Because again, a lot of people out there are obsessed with the hitting, ball go
I
long, team go
think
long. I think you build on pitching, man. I think pitching, it's easier to have solid pitching than try to go and sign a Teoscar Hernandez for like a long term.
if you look at the trades that we made, OJ, it looks like what they're gonna do. To your point, your plan is already taking hold this year. They're gonna get as many kids as they can in the Cats lab, and they're gonna use these open slots in the rotation as an opportunity to kick the tires on everybody at the same time. Like I said it earlier when they started to make the transition away from Rick Hahn. They want to bring Project Birmingham to life. The easiest way to do that is to make sure you have a pipeline of young arms that are ready to go. We might see over 20 different starting pitchers
Is
this
that
year for
worth
the
it
White
though?
Sox.
That's Oakland though. If Oakland has the White Sox pitching last year, they're in third place. They're not the worst team in Major League Baseball. I think that pitching, considering the fact that you might lose Cease in 2 years and it gives you a way better position of negotiation. I think that there's pitchers in the open market internationally and domestically on names of guys that can anchor a starting rotation that you are at least going to be 500 for the next 5 years. If you go ahead and you go and say, we're going 100% young, and the only starter that's on the rotation, a legit starter, is Dylan Cease, and you don't know what Tuki's going to bring, and then you have another 4 starters just being out there, let's see who's going to make it, you could lose 100 games a couple years in a row because starting pitching, okay, is so important because we're talking about innings that are, if you have a person destroy your bullpen on a Monday night game, you're shot for the rest of the series. You're done.
Yeah.
Your bullpen is destroyed. There's nothing worse that destroys a good bullpen, which, mind you, I think that the reason the White Sox bullpen struggled in this season and in previous season is because the starting pitching did not give them the best chance possible. If you pulled the bullpen with the starting staff of the Minnesota Twins, that bullpen looks way better. But they were overexposed, overused, mishandled horribly. Probably one of the worst things that Pedro Grifol did was bullpen management and pitching. Okay? Mind you, with the help of analytics, Ethan Katz, and someone really helping him manage the bullpen, if you have starters that are at least going to give you Trevor Bauers of the world, okay, the Maneas, the Nolas, if you spend money on guys that can eat that, I think that you can rebuild. You're at least going to get back to, I'm not saying winning the division next year, but you're going to build better culture, getting back to 500. Because here's one thing, guys. I don't care how big of a guru you are in culture. Any team that's losing 101 games, that's not culture. Everybody there is like, we suck.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're just ruining. Colson Montgomery's like, I don't want to come and be on a 100 game losing team. So they need to get back to 500 and at least flirt with like, ooh, we were kind of fighting for the division, and you kind of get that taste in. Mind you, why do I believe this? When Ozzie Guillen took over the team in 2005, okay, and no one notices this because they always notice the trades. All the guys that have been on the White Sox from the previous regime, bless Jerry Manuel's heart, he did a great job getting a lot of those guys ready for big league baseball. And he was the one that took the heart, the pain and the heartaches with those guys. But all those guys were in the league like 4 to 5 years in, that when it was time for them to shine, they're ready to go. Burley, Garland, Rowan, Creedy. So that core of those players that were the young guys at one point in the early 2000s, in the later 2000s, they were the guys that got that team to greatness, filled in with a couple guys in free agency. So again, those guys were not losing 100 games. They were continually battling and getting beat and almost making it, and Minnesota taking it. I think you need a little bit of that in order to have growth, regardless of who the manager is. So I think that they need to get to a point where they need to win as many games as possible and not tank and not go for a number one prospect. They need to get to 500 as soon as possible and start playing decent baseball where you're flirting and saying, at least we're looking at guys now and the potential they have. And with the roster that Chris Gonzalez just gave right now, and if he can pull it off mathematically, and if Gonzo can put that team together on paper, I don't see why the White Sox front office can't do it.
So before I wrap the number breakdown that I did, I mentioned I wanted to trade Eloy, and I'm looking to trade him for that shortstop. This would be over the end for me, but I'm trying to trade him because I know the Brewers were interested in him, so I'm trying to get Willie Adames out of it, or trade him to Seattle, maybe get J.P. Crawford to lead off my lineup. But that'd be over the top, I think. But I just want to get that $13 million off the books, and because I already have Santander coming in, who's more reliable than Eloy, so that's a priority for me. But the numbers crunch of this is on the books right now for 24 this offseason is $84.5 million before arbitration. After all the arbitration is done, the target of arbitration is looking to be at $101 million altogether. So that's only what 16 million added onto the books of that 84 million. So you're at 101 million on the books after arbitration. My breakdown of Rogers at 4.2 million, Verdugo at 9.2 million, Santander at 14.1, Garver at 10, Yamamoto 25, Minea at 12, Flaherty at 11. That all totals up to 85.5 million. You subtract Eloy's 13 million off of that, and you're at a total of 72.5 million covered on those names. So 72.5 plus that 101, you're at what, 183.5 million on the books. That puts you at the between the 180 and 190 range that they're talking about going into next season. So I'm well within that range.
So the payroll this year was 175, 783.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm
only raising it by 11 million.
So that's what I'm saying though. So your delta, I believe that your delta should be 15 to 20 million. Okay, depending on if you're going for it or trying to rebuild or whatnot. At least 10 million should be your delta, just under inflation and kind of like. But after the season that the White Sox just had, okay, where the White Sox fans have not had a White Sox Fest in I don't know how many years, where you have taken away their
4.
broadcaster. It's 4 seasons. Okay, 4 years no White Sox Fest. You've taken away your favorite broadcaster. You did not sign a player like Tim Anderson, where you traded Jake Berger, a fan favorite, where you brought in an internal hire where people wanted you to go out there and interview a bunch of people for the position, where you hired a Pedro Grifol and sat there and let him talk the way that he did in the press conference and basically sell himself like he was the next greatest manager of all time, and it was a fiasco when it is. All those things that you're making, like all the things that the White Sox fan have endured, okay, all through this last, I'm going to say since like the COVID year, like the hiring, let's keep it real. Majority of the fans were not happy that Tony La Russa was the manager. Okay, we just had Joe Espada, who's my favorite, obviously with Ozzy to take over for the future. He just went to Houston. So all these things that are happening, you find out that Tony is still in the front office. To the White Sox fan, especially to our fans out there in the cesspool on Twitter who are our listeners, I really think that they deserve this. They deserve an extra $15 million, $20 million spend on them, splurged on them. I really do. I don't think that you can go in and then you're telling them we're not rebuilding. If you're really going to stand behind those words, you go out there and you put the best team together. Because one thing that they should definitely consider, now I'm going from my baseball talk to more of the financial talk. If they think they're going to go out there and it's going to be okay with them losing 100 games again, I don't know, man. I really think that this team can go and start looking at Oakland Athletic attendance, because they've never drawn well as it was. And I feel like these fans are going to say, you know what? We're just not going to show up. And other than the 108 guys out there, they're going to still be out there. But everybody else that just buys that ticket, I don't think the White Sox, the franchise, can afford another 100-game losing season or two. And the quicker they fix that problem, I'm not even talking about them winning a division or going on a deep run. I'm talking about them just being relevant again. They need to get to that place as soon as possible, even with Pedro Grifol as the manager. They need to get to like winning baseball and having, and that's what's going to change the culture, because I don't think marketing is going to do it this time around. I think people they've caught up to that point again. I really think that they need to do it with wins on the field. And I think if that's $190 million budget, then you do it. You have to do it. You have to spend more than you did the previous year, because I think the fans deserve it. And you guys know how much I'm always against the fans and what they think. I really think for what they've endured in the past 3 years, 15, 20 million, they deserve that.
Yeah, and I was trying to be as idealistic as I could be, being aggressive, making it work with the budget that was projected to be allocated. At the end of the day, like I said, Yamamoto is my top priority, and then 2025.
Who would be your top guy? Who would be your guy? Who would be your number one? If you had to do one thing today, what would you do? You have to do one. Your first move. Chris Getz brings you in, says you're my guy, Gonzo. What would you do?
And I said it. My top priority is signing Yamamoto to pair up with Cease, because my outlook would be Yamamoto's that big signing of 24. I'm extending Cease in 25, and they're both going to be 25, 30 million a piece there. So come 2026, your top three is likely going to be Cease, Yamamoto, and then you're bringing up Noah Schultz to be Cease, Yamamoto, Schultz for your top three in your rotation. And that's going to be
that's at least makes it interesting. Again, I like that, and Dylan probably won't like this if he listens to this, but I'm saying I would sign a free agent, because then you could be more aggressive in negotiations. Like, I have somebody that's almost as hot as you. Mm-hmm. So we can debate. If you don't have anyone, then they know the agent, I think, knows that he has leverage on you. And when you look at I always look at the free agents and like where they're coming. I really like this class. Most people are like all about the draft picks and like the draft class. I like the free agent market. Like, if you have a chance to get a couple really good players in the free agent market, like the Rogers and the arbitration borderline. If you can fix that up, you get back to being 500. Then from 500 to you getting into the playoffs, that's a whole other different conversation. That's a manager switch, maybe a coach. You might bring in an extra
OJ,
pitcher.
what if I tell you next year, right? I don't guarantee anybody get statistically better. I don't guarantee health or anything. What if I told you next year the White Sox are a better base running and defensive team?
They're not losing 100 games.
Period.
Same offensive stats, same everything. They just get better at running the bases and catching the ball. They're not
I
losing
think
100
that's
games.
what they got I think that's what they got to do, because if you look at what the White Sox turned into, they turned into a team that can't really get any extra bags. I think what Chris Getz and Barfield, what they want to do is they want to figure out how can they keep this White Sox team on the move, keep them athletic, and making sure that you don't have to rely on the OPS and the BABIP and the fucking ISO to score runs.
People are going to get mad at me for this because White Sox fans are obsessed with home runs, even in Ozzy's era. Even Ozzy's go-go White Sox hit more home runs than any other team in the league. They just thought that Ozzy was like all about stealing bases and bunting. What the Baltimore Orioles did and what the Arizona Diamondbacks did, I like that Barfield has been around that type of build of baseball because there was a lot of guys in that roster, and he just mentioned a guy, Rogers, where you find value. And it's like if you would have gone to Mitt Warefield a lot younger. And Benetti's like that, where you can get value from a player and focus on winning, but the numbers are not that crazy offensively. Meaning you don't have a guy with 45 home runs, but it's a mix of everybody being average, but everyone doing the little things perfect. So Arizona, they hit the ball, they caught the ball. You dropped the ball, they were taking second. First to third, very easily. No one was not scoring from second base. Execution, runner on third base, driving them in. Not necessarily the bunt. If 8 out of 9 guys play with that level of baseball, you can get away with Yoan Moncada just being Yoan.
Well,
and just
I
kind of
mean,
like
Arizona had a lineup full of guys that could hit a chopper 2 hopper and beat
correct,
it
but I think that there was one of the biggest disappointments. Again, false prediction was the first 5 games of spring training. You guys can go look up these stats. The White Sox were running the bases. Okay, and mind you, I thought that Moncada and Tim Anderson and that combination of Pantera, they could have 25 stolen bases each. Not even trying, just you know, it's just in reality, just like kind of just going with it and stealing bases. They were one of the teams at least that took the least advantage of the rule change.
Yeah.
And you look at getting that extra base. And I know a lot of people in analytics are against the stealing the bases and moving, but when you don't have, I understand what Chris Getz is saying, that it's easier to rebuild with looking for solid all-around players than it is bringing in 5 guys that drop 40 home runs in today's game. That's a lot harder and a lot harder on your pocket than being able to just fill in. And that's what the White Sox need to do. And that's something that Pedro Grifol needs to do as a manager. Like right now, his DNA is we lost 100 games and we suck. But when you look at Cleveland, it's like great, like bad offensive team, great pitching, but catch the ball. Like everyone needs to have a DNA. The White Sox need to find what that is, especially when they lost guys that build that former DNA and kind of see, okay, moving forward, this is the type of team we're going to be, whatever it is that they want to be, but really stick to it. And I really think that average, solid baseball player, offensive, doesn't have to be a juggernaut with good pitching, gets you closer to 500 than you just going out there and starting to say, we're going to have 5 guys hit 35 home runs. That's my reality of how I think. And again, if Moncada hits 15, Andrew hits 25, Benetti hits 5. Like when you put this stuff together, you really don't have to have one guy hit 50. That's just the way that I see it.
And that wraps up our external look. Chat, we were going to get into our MLB All-Time Series at third base of the show, but we're going to have to push that to the next one due to our time constraints for today. Looking forward here. We're looking at coming back after Thanksgiving, after the holidays. We'll be on in that first week of December, likely when we start talking the winter meetings, and we'll bring our MLB All-Time Series back to the show. But that is what is going on coming up here. Guys, you want to do some shout outs here real quick before we wrap it up? I'll let you start, Justin. Give us a good shout out here.
I want to give a shout out to the American League, my favorite sports conference. You really had me on the ropes. I thought you guys were gonna fold to Arizona Diamondbacks. You didn't. You stood tall. You brought Creed back into relevance, so it was good for me as a baseball fan. Got to give a shout out to Asia, of course, Triple OG, hardest working woman I know. White Sox could learn a lot from Asia. Too bad they're stupid. They don't even learn from Gonzo, who basically just built a better team than the front office could and stayed well around budget. So, what can I say? If I'm being perfectly transparent, I actually miss the White Sox. I miss Yohan Moncada. I even miss Aaron Bummer. Like, that's where I'm at as a White Sox fan. I miss you guys.
I like the shout out that you made. I hate when people are saying that they're not gonna watch the White Sox, that you're gonna have a second team. That's fine. You're gonna watch. I've been watching. My father's been fired, released, let go. When you watch White Sox baseball, you might not be watching comfortably, but you're watching, even if it's peeping through a back hole. You're watching, and you're critiquing.
Hold on now, player.
No, you are. You're watching from the back. You're saying, I don't care, but you're watching. You're watching. You're watching. It's all BS. Saying that you're not watching. I'm not going to give my money to Jerry. BS. You are watching. Okay? You are watching. Stop pretending. I'm still watching the Bears. So I've never been a guy that says I'm not going to watch.
Especially stop when playing, man. Talking about you still watching the Bears. They're okay.
I am watching the Bears. Again, I'm a fan. I can say that because I'm a fan of the team. And I know that they're not at the greatest place ever, but I still watch them. So I can't pretend and say I'm not going to be a fan of this team when I know that's not going to be true. And White Sox fans, 99.9% of them, if they sign Trevor Bauer, they sign somebody else, you might lose a couple guys or whatever. But it's not like you're going nowhere. Okay? Like the team is still here. You're going nowhere. So stop pretending. You might not be a season ticket holder, but you're still watching. You might not drop 10 grand on the team, but you're still dropping 500. Again, you're
going nowhere.
You're going nowhere. Here's the thing.
You sound like Randy Savage.
Chris Gonzo's best show, and it's Gonzo versus Getz now. Okay, because Gonzo was able to pull a lineup, a roster that I think is pretty good on paper, pretty competitive team. And I haven't even looked at the numbers, but I just looked at just on the names itself. I'm like, man, that's a solid team to compete in the American League Central. Under 190 million. So that's a barometer. If Gonzo could do it in his spare time with public information, not even like straight up scouting info, so I'm sure they have better info than we do, then why can't you guys do it? So shout out to Gonzo for being able to pull that off. Shout out to our listeners for being out there, for keeping it real, for those White Sox fans that are sticking around. Shout out to you guys. And it's going to be It's an off season that's going to be interesting, because now it's a slow. It's getting back to 500 is the goal for them. It's getting back to 500. And shout out to my boy David Ross that got done wrong, got taken out got executed from the back, and I'm super salty about that. But we'll keep that for another show. I've been thinking about him this past.
They treated him like Ned Stark, OJ.
They did. It was one of those episodes that you keep playing in your back, and then you find out yesterday that allegedly he texted Console wishing him good luck. He's a way better man than me. I would have told him to F off and told all of my players to. Oh, and then my next shout out is finally, I'm very excited the Houston Astros went internally and are giving Joe Espada a chance to be a manager. Good family friend. He coached with Ozzie in 2012 with the Marlins. Great coach even back then, and I think he's gonna be a good guy for the game of baseball. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does with the Astros. So, and again, we'll see you guys in a couple weeks, hopefully right after the holidays.
Yeah, and as I'm about to do my shout out, I'm just gonna put what my ideal roster was after doing this external breakdown, just so the chat, just so we have it on paper here, because I would love to see it happen. But my shout out, I gotta shout out my one and only Soraya. She's at class right now. That exam that she took 2 shows ago, she nailed. She got 98 on it.
Yes.
Proud of her.
Yes.
She's got another test on Thursday, test number 3, so she's nervous about that. I know she'll nail that too.
For all we know, she picked your roster too. How do we know this is your roster? How do we know this is you and not hers?
Exactly.
We got our secrets, OJ. We have our secrets. I'm gonna put the rotation here for you too. But besides her, I'm gonna shout out. Let's see who else came in the chat here. We had Franzis in the chat. We had Rafa in the chat. We got New York Underground in there. We got J Ro in there. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. All the shout outs go to you. And last but not least, I had a shout out KG. I went to Chicago. I was in town last week. I met up with Justin at Little Joe's on the west side on Taylor Street. And we had some 11 out of 10 tacos while we had some drinks watching the Bears and the Hawks. That was a fun time. KG is a good guy. We got to do something with him in the spring. We're planning on doing a show. But that's a long ways out from now. But tune in. We're probably going to come back in 2 weeks from now or so, right around the winter meetings. So tune in to our next episode. Thank you for watching. I am Gonzo. On my other side of me is Justin Lee. Below me is Isaac Guillen Jr. Thank you for listening to The Blackout Show, presented by the Guillen Grid. You have been blacked out.
You have